Lena had always been the kind of woman who believed in hard work and perseverance. She didn't come from wealth, nor did she care for the luxuries that others sought. Her life had been shaped by humble beginnings, but that didn't stop her from dreaming big. Over the years, she had built a career from the ground up, starting in small offices and working her way through various roles until she was finally applying for her dream position at Serenity Solutions, a high-end tech firm known for its innovations and market leadership. Her resume was solid, her experience impeccable, and her references glowing. She had spent weeks preparing for this interview, practicing her responses, researching the company, and making sure every detail was perfect. Lena was determined, not only because this was the job she had always wanted, but because it felt like the right step in her professional journey. Yet, as she walked into the sleek, modern office building of Serenity Solutions, something felt off. The polished glass doors, the high ceilings, and the pristine reception area all looked like something out of a magazine. Beautiful, sophisticated, but intimidating. Lena knew she wasn't one to easily back down from a challenge, but even she could feel the weight of the atmosphere. "Can I help you?" the receptionist asked, her tone sharp, glancing up from her computer screen. Lena gave a polite smile. "Yes, I'm here for an interview with Mr. Harrison, the hiring manager." The receptionist barely looked up as she typed something into her computer. "Ah, yes, please have a seat. Mr. Harrison will be with you shortly." Lena nodded, choosing a seat in the sleek waiting area. She sat upright, trying to calm the nervous flutter in her stomach. She knew her qualifications were more than enough, but the pressure of the moment was overwhelming. As she glanced around at the other candidates waiting, Lena couldn't help but feel a little out of place. They were all impeccably dressed in designer suits, their eyes focused ahead, while she sat in a simple blouse and skirt, her hair loosely tied back. A few moments later, the door to the interview room opened, and a tall, sharp-dressed man stepped out. He was in his late 30s with dark hair combed back and a confident stride that seemed to command the room. He extended his hand to the next candidate waiting. "Mr. Harrison will see you now," the receptionist said, her voice cool and distant. Lena stood up, taking a deep breath as she made her way toward the door. She could feel the eyes of the other candidates on her, some of them sizing her up, others clearly lost in their own thoughts. She tried to shake off the sense of being judged as she entered the room. "Miss Carter?" Mr. Harrison greeted her, his voice deep and professional. "Please, have a seat." She sat down across from him, placing her bag on the floor beside her. The room was immaculate, decorated with sleek modern furniture and minimalist art on the walls. It felt like the kind of place where only the best and the brightest worked. "Thank you for coming in today," Mr. Harrison continued. "Let's get started. Tell me about your experience at TechSphere Solutions. Why are you looking to make a move?" Lena launched into her carefully rehearsed response, detailing her experience and the projects she had managed. She made sure to highlight her leadership skills, her ability to adapt, and her passion for technology. She could see Mr. Harrison nodding along, but his eyes never seemed to stay on her for too long. His gaze drifted to the notes he had in front of him, and she couldn't shake the feeling that he was looking for a reason to dismiss her. She finished her answer, hoping she had made the right impression, but Mr. Harrison didn't immediately respond. Instead, he looked at her for a moment with a thoughtful expression, then closed the folder in front of him with a small sigh. "Lena," he began, his tone neutral, "I appreciate your experience, but to be honest, we're looking for someone who has more, let's say, corporate Polish. Your background is great, but it doesn't align with what we're seeking for this position." Lena's stomach sank. She had been so sure of herself, so confident in her abilities, and now it felt like the ground had been ripped out from beneath her. "I understand," she replied, her voice steady despite the disappointment she felt. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Harrison." As she stood up to leave, she could feel the sting of rejection settle in her chest. She had worked so hard for this, put everything into the interview, and yet it was clear that, to them, she wasn't enough. She walked out of the room, her head held high, but inside she felt crushed. Little did she know, this rejection would set the stage for something far bigger than she could have ever imagined. Lena left the sleek building of Serenity Solutions with her head held high, though her heart felt heavy. She tried to shake off the rejection, reminding herself that this was just one company, one opportunity. She had been turned down before, and it didn't mean the end of her career. Still, something about the interview felt different. The coldness in Mr. Harrison's eyes, the way he looked past her at times. It was like she wasn't just being judged on her qualifications, but on something else she couldn't put her finger on. Walking down the steps of the building, Lena pulled her phone out of her bag, her fingers trembling slightly as she typed a message to Daniel. The interview didn't go well. I was rejected. They said I didn't have enough corporate polish. She hit send, the words still feeling foreign on her screen. She wasn't used to rejection like this, especially after years of hard work and dedication. She thought back to the moments when she had doubted herself during the interview, feeling like an outsider among the polished, confident candidates. Maybe they were right. Maybe she wasn't corporate enough. Before she could overthink it too much, her phone buzzed with a reply from Daniel. "Don't worry about it, darling. I'm sure it's just not the right fit. We'll talk more tonight. Come home and relax." His response was comforting, but it didn't erase the gnawing feeling of failure that had settled in her stomach. She had spent months preparing for this job, hoping it would be the next step in her career, and now it felt like it had all been for nothing. Lena stood on the sidewalk, staring up at the building for a moment before making her way to her car. The weight of the day pressed down on her, but as she drove, she pushed the thoughts of the interview to the back of her mind. She had Daniel's support, and that was what mattered most. When she arrived home, Lena walked through the door, her shoulders slumped. She knew Daniel would be waiting for her, ready to offer comfort and encouragement. She had always admired how he remained so calm and collected, no matter the circumstances. He was everything she wasn't. Confident, assured, and powerful. But tonight it seemed that her own sense of self-worth had taken a hit. "Hey, darling," Daniel greeted her from the living room, setting down a file as he stood to hug her. He kissed her cheek gently, his arms wrapping around her in a warm embrace. How did it go? Lena took a deep breath, feeling the comforting presence of her husband. "It didn't go well," she admitted softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "They said I wasn't polished enough. I don't know, Daniel. I thought I had everything they wanted, but they didn't see me that way." Daniel's expression softened with concern. "You know that's not true, right?" he said, pulling back to look at her. "You are more than enough. If they didn't see that, then they're not the company for you, simple as that. I know you want to make me feel better, but I'm just so tired of being told I'm not enough," Lena said, her voice thick with frustration. "Why does it always feel like I have to prove myself more than everyone else?" Daniel's face shifted, his expression turning more serious. "Lena, listen to me," he said, his tone firm but gentle. "You are more than enough. I've always known that. But sometimes people don't see the value in what they have right in front of them, and those people are missing out." Lena stared at him, her eyes filling with unshed tears. "I don't know if I can keep doing this, all this trying, this proving. I want to succeed, Daniel, but maybe I'm just not cut out for it." Daniel reached for her hand, his grip steady and unwavering. You're more than cut out for it. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. Your worth isn't determined by some interview or some company's standards. It's determined by the impact you've had on the world, on the people you've helped. And you've helped so many, Lena. That's what matters. That's where your value lies. For the first time that day, Lena felt the weight on her shoulders begin to lighten. She had always known Daniel believed in her, but hearing him say it out loud, so firmly, filled her with the courage she had been lacking. I just need to find a place that values me for who I am, Lena said, more to herself than to Daniel. A place where I don't have to hide who I am just to fit in. Daniel smiled, his eyes softening as he cupped her face in his hands. And you will. You're stronger than you realize. You've always had everything it takes, Lena. The right opportunity will come. Just wait. Lena closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. She knew he was right. She had been so focused on this one rejection that she hadn't stopped to think about all the people who had recognized her worth before. She had built her career from the ground up, and she wasn't about to let one company's rejection define her future. Tonight, the defeat was still fresh, but with Daniel's support, she felt a spark of hope beginning to rekindle in her heart. She wasn't done yet. This was just one chapter of her story, and the next one would be hers to write. The next few days after the interview passed in a blur of mixed emotions for Lena. She tried to shake off the disappointment, but the rejection at Serenity Solutions lingered in her mind. Every time she sat down to work, she found herself questioning her worth, wondering if she was truly cut out for the next level of success she had always dreamed of. But with Daniel's encouragement and her own inner strength, she pushed through, telling herself that the right opportunity would eventually come. One evening, as they sat at dinner, Daniel put down his fork and looked at her with a thoughtful expression. "Lena, I've been thinking," he began, his voice quiet but serious. "There's something I need to tell you." Lena raised an eyebrow, wondering what was on his mind. He had been unusually quiet over the past few days, perhaps sensing her own struggle. "What is it, Daniel?" she asked, setting down her own utensils. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "You know how I've always told you that you're going to get the right opportunity soon. Well, I think it's time I tell you something that might change the way you see things." Lena's curiosity piqued. "What do you mean? What's going on?" Daniel's eyes softened, and there was a hint of hesitation before he spoke again. "The truth is, you've already been qualified for an opportunity, an incredible one, but it's not the kind of job interview you're used to. It's not the kind of opportunity anyone else can offer." Lena looked at him, trying to piece together what he was saying. "What do you mean? What opportunity?" Daniel leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "I haven't told you everything about my company, and I probably should have by now. But I didn't want you to feel pressured or think that you were only going to succeed because of me." Lena's heart began to race. She had always known that Daniel was successful, but the idea of his company offering her a job, especially after being rejected at Serenity Solutions, felt surreal. "Daniel, what are you saying?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He smiled, though it was tinged with something like pride. "I'm saying that the CEO of Reynolds Tech has been keeping an eye on you for a while. In fact, he's been waiting for you to decide if you wanted to come work for us. The thing is, it's always been in front of you, right under your nose." Lena felt the room spin for a second, her mind struggling to catch up with his words. "Wait, you mean your company? I had no idea." Daniel chuckled softly, his gaze warm. "I know. I've kept it from you because I didn't want you to feel like you were being handed a position simply because of me. But Lena, you've built your own career, your own reputation. I've always respected how hard you work, and I've known all along that you were more than qualified for something much bigger." The weight of his words sank in slowly. She had been rejected for a job she thought was the perfect fit, but here was Daniel, revealing that he had an incredible opportunity waiting for her all along. The idea of working for Reynolds Tech, her husband's company, felt both overwhelming and oddly liberating. She shook her head slightly, still trying to process. But why didn't you tell me sooner? I've been working so hard to prove myself on my own. I didn't want to rely on you." Daniel's expression softened with understanding. "I get it. I never wanted you to feel like you owed anything to me or my position. But this isn't about that. This is about recognizing the incredible person you are, the work you've done, and the way you've built your own path. I know you've been discouraged lately, but I've been watching you, and I know the kind of impact you could have at Reynolds Tech." Lena blinked, her emotions threatening to overwhelm her. She had never expected this kind of revelation, especially not from Daniel. She had always admired him for his achievements, but now it felt like he was showing her a new side of herself that she hadn't fully realized. She leaned back in her chair, feeling the weight of the decision she was about to make. But how does this even work? Would I still be working with the same team, the same people I was going to work with at Serenity Solutions? Daniel nodded. Exactly. You would be working with the best in the industry. You'll have the freedom to innovate and create. And you won't have to worry about being judged for not fitting into a mold. We value you for who you are, Lena. Not just for what you can do, but for the impact you've already made. The realization began to settle in. What Daniel was offering wasn't just a job. It was a chance for her to shape her own future, to prove to herself and the world that her worth didn't depend on anyone's approval but her own. She wasn't just the woman sitting at home, waiting for an opportunity to fall into her lap. She had already earned it, and now it was time for her to take it. "I'm ready," Lena said, her voice firm with newfound determination. "I've always been ready. I just didn't see it until now." Daniel smiled, a proud gleam in his eyes. "I knew you'd say that." Lena sat in stunned silence for a moment, the weight of Daniel's words pressing heavily on her mind. The idea of joining Reynolds Tech, a company she had admired from afar, seemed almost too good to be true, but she couldn't deny the excitement bubbling inside her. This wasn't just a job. It was the opportunity she had worked so hard for, and it had been waiting for her all along. Daniel watched her closely, his expression gentle but full of expectation. He knew this moment was important for her, perhaps even life-changing, but he also knew that Lena wasn't the kind of person who would make a decision without careful thought. After a few beats, Lena finally broke the silence, her voice steady, but filled with a mix of excitement and hesitation. "But why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked again, this time with less confusion, more curiosity. "I feel like I've been spinning my wheels, trying to prove myself to everyone, but you've known all along that this was where I was supposed to be." Daniel's gaze softened, and he placed his hand over hers, squeezing it gently. "I didn't want you to think I was using my position to get you what you wanted. You've always been so independent, so determined to make your own way. I wanted you to know that whatever you achieve, it's because of your skills and your hard work, not because of me." Lena looked down at their hands, the reality of what was unfolding sinking in. She had always been proud of her independence, but now she realized that there was nothing wrong with accepting the opportunities that came her way, especially when they aligned with everything she had worked for. She took a deep breath, her eyes meeting Daniel's with new clarity. "I've spent so much time trying to prove I can make it on my own that I almost miss the fact that this could be the perfect place for me. A chance to take everything I've learned and build something bigger, something that matters. I've been so focused on not relying on you, on not being seen as just your wife, but maybe I've been missing the point." Daniel smiled, his eyes shining with pride. "Lena, you're not just my wife. You're a force in your own right, and I've seen that from the very beginning. I've always believed in you, but now it's your turn to believe in yourself." Lena nodded, her mind racing with the possibilities. She had spent years working to build a career, but now she realized that she didn't have to do it alone. With Daniel's support, she could take her career to new heights, and she didn't have to hide behind any doubts or insecurities. This was her moment to step up, to embrace the opportunity in front of her without reservation. "I'm ready," Lena said, her voice filled with determination. "I've always been ready. I just needed to believe it." Daniel grinned, the pride in his eyes unmistakable. "That's my girl." That evening, after dinner, Lena sat down at her desk in the study, her laptop open in front of her. It felt surreal to be on the brink of something so new, so exciting. She began typing out an email to the HR department at Reynolds Tech, formally accepting the offer. The words seemed to flow effortlessly from her fingertips, the decision now clear in her mind. She clicked send, and as the confirmation appeared on her screen, a wave of relief washed over her. She had made the choice. And in doing so, she had chosen herself. The email was just the first step in her new journey, but Lena knew there was no turning back now. Her phone buzzed as she finished up, and she saw a message from Daniel. "Welcome to Reynolds Tech, darling. Let's make history together." A smile spread across Lena's face as she set her phone down. The future suddenly seemed full of possibilities, and for the first time in a long while, Lena felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. She wasn't just stepping into a new job. She was stepping into the woman she had always wanted to be, confident, capable, and proud of everything she had achieved. As she walked into the living room, where Daniel was sitting with a glass of wine, she couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude. He had always believed in her, and now she believed in herself. "Ready to take on the world?" Daniel asked, his voice warm with excitement. Lena nodded, taking the glass of wine he offered her. "Ready? Let's make it happen." The days after Lena's decision to join Reynolds Tech passed in a flurry of activity. Her first official day at the company was just around the corner, and she couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and nerves. The change was overwhelming, but also incredibly exhilarating. This was the beginning of a new chapter, one where she would finally step into a role that reflected everything she had worked for over the years. On her first day, Lena stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar of her blouse. She had always been a believer in simplicity, but today she allowed herself to embrace the idea of change. The woman in the reflection looked back at her with confidence. She wasn't just someone's wife or a candidate rejected from a prestigious company. She was Lena Carter, a woman who had earned this place in the world by working hard, by persevering through every challenge that had come her way. Daniel had given her the space she needed to come to this decision on her own, but as she stood there in their apartment, preparing for the day ahead, she felt his unwavering support behind her. He had always been there, rooting for her, but now it was her time to shine. When she arrived at Reynolds Tech, the building seemed to hum with energy. The sleek, modern glass exterior of the office tower reflected the sunlight, making it look like something out of a futuristic movie. She felt the familiar flutter of nerves in her stomach, but this time it was different. She wasn't about to walk into a room where she felt inferior. No, today she was walking into a place where she would thrive, where her skills and talents would be recognized for what they truly were. "Good morning, Miss Carter." One of the receptionists greeted her as she entered the lobby. The bright smile on her face made Lena feel a little more at ease. "Good morning," Lena replied, returning the smile. The receptionist handed her a badge with her name on it and directed her to the elevator. The familiar click of her heels echoed through the sleek, open space as she made her way to the top floor. When the elevator doors opened, Lena stepped out into a bright, airy office filled with modern workstations and glass-walled meeting rooms. The space felt alive, buzzing with creative energy. The first person she saw was Grace, the director of operations who had arranged her meeting for the day. Grace, a woman in her 40s with a sharp bob haircut and an impeccable sense of style, walked up to Lena with a warm smile. "Welcome to Reynolds Tech, Lena. I'm so glad you're here," Grace said, extending her hand. Lena took her hand, feeling a sense of calm wash over her. "Thank you, Grace. I'm excited to be here." Grace led her to her new office, a spacious room with a beautiful view of the city. "This is yours now," she said, gesturing to the desk and the sleek chair that sat in the middle of the room. You'll be working with the team on some high-profile projects, and we're thrilled to have you on board. Your experience is exactly what we need." Lena's heart skipped a beat. She had worked hard for years to get to this point, but now, as she looked around at her new office, she realized how much this moment meant to her. She wasn't just stepping into a new position, she was stepping into the role she had always dreamed of. After getting settled in, Lena spent the rest of the morning meeting with various team members, getting introduced to her colleagues and learning about the projects they were working on. The atmosphere was collaborative, and Lena quickly realized how different this environment was from the corporate culture at Serenity Solutions. Here, it wasn't about appearances or fitting into a mold. It was about what you could contribute and how your skills would move the company forward. By the time lunch rolled around, Lena was feeling more at ease. As she sat in the break room with a few of her new colleagues, one of them, Tom, a software developer, turned to her with a curious expression. "So, Lena," he said, his voice friendly, "how did you find us? I mean, not many people would think of applying here without some sort of, inside connection." Lena paused, wondering if this was the moment when someone might mention her connection to Daniel. She had been wondering how long it would take for people to put the pieces together. "Well," she began with a smile, "I didn't exactly have an inside connection, but I've been in the industry long enough to know that the right company is one that values the work you do and the impact you can have." Tom nodded, looking impressed. "I like that. Honestly, it's refreshing to see someone so focused on what they bring to the table." Lena smiled, grateful for the easy conversation. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she was being seen for her skills, not her relationships or her clothes. She was here because she had earned her spot, and that felt incredibly empowering. By the end of her first day, Lena was exhausted but exhilarated. She had met so many new people, learned about exciting projects, and felt like she was part of something much bigger than herself. As she left the office building that evening, she felt a new sense of purpose. She was no longer just the woman who had been rejected. She was a valuable part of Reynolds Tech, and this was just the beginning of her journey. Lena's first week at Reynolds Tech passed in a whirlwind of activity. She was learning more than she ever thought possible, diving into projects that challenged her skills and pushed her limits. The team was supportive, the work was rewarding, and the opportunities for growth seemed endless. For the first time in a long while, Lena felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. But the real moment of change came 2 weeks into her new role. Lena had been assigned to lead a major presentation for a new product launch, something that would define the company's next big move. She was nervous. There was no denying that. But the more she worked on the project, the more confident she became. She had a team she trusted, and they respected her leadership. The project was coming together better than she had hoped. One afternoon, as she prepared for the final meeting with the board, she found herself reflecting on how far she had come. It seemed like just yesterday she had walked into Serenity Solutions, hopeful but rejected. Now, here she was, leading a project that would make an impact, not just in the company but in the industry. As the day of the presentation arrived, Lena dressed in her usual understated style, simple, professional, and confident. She could feel the nervous energy bubbling up inside her, but she kept her head high. She was ready for this moment. It wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about showing them that she belonged here, not because of who she was married to, but because of what she had to offer. When the boardroom doors opened, Lena stood tall, walking into the room with her head held high. Daniel had told her that this was her time to shine, and she wasn't going to waste it. She had spent the last few weeks meticulously preparing for this moment, and now it was her turn to show her colleagues what she was capable of. The board members greeted her, their faces unreadable, but she could sense the respect in the room. They had already seen the preliminary work her team had done, and they were eager to see how she would bring it all together. Lena began her presentation, her voice steady and strong as she outlined the key strategies, innovations, and benefits of the new product. The room was quiet, the only sound being the soft hum of the projector in the background. She could feel the eyes of the board members on her, but instead of shrinking under the pressure, she embraced it. This was her moment. As she wrapped up the presentation, she glanced around the room, meeting the eyes of each board member. She didn't need their approval. She had already earned it through her hard work and dedication, and now they were seeing it too. The silence in the room stretched for a few moments before one of the senior board members, Mr. Jacobs, a seasoned veteran of the tech industry, cleared his throat. "I have to admit, I wasn't sure what to expect when I heard we'd be giving the lead on this project to someone who was so new to the team," he began, his voice deep and steady. "But after seeing this presentation, I have to say, I'm impressed. You've not only met expectations, you've exceeded them." Lena's heart skipped a beat, but she maintained her composure. She could feel the weight of the moment, but she refused to let it overwhelm her. "Thank you, Mr. Jacobs," she replied, her voice calm but filled with pride. "It's been a team effort, but I'm proud of what we've accomplished. And I'm excited to see what we can do next." The room erupted into a round of applause, and Lena couldn't help but smile. This was the moment she had worked for, the moment where all the doubts and rejections faded away. She wasn't just a woman married to a successful man anymore. She was Lena Carter, a leader in her own right, someone who had earned her place at the table. As the applause died down, Daniel, who had been sitting at the back of the room, stood up and walked toward her. His face was filled with pride, and when he reached her, he pulled her into a tight hug. "You did it," he whispered, his voice filled with admiration. "I did," Lena said softly, her heart swelling with emotion. "And I couldn't have done it without your support." Daniel pulled back, his hands resting on her shoulders. "You've always had everything it takes. I'm just glad you're finally seeing it." Lena nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. She had always known she was capable, but tonight she had proven it to herself. She didn't need anyone's validation but her own. She had worked hard for this, and it had finally paid off. As she stood in the boardroom, surrounded by her colleagues, Lena realized something profound. This wasn't just about the job or the success. It was about who she had become in the process. She had spent so many years doubting herself, trying to prove her worth, but now she knew that her value wasn't tied to anyone's opinions or expectations. It was defined by who she was, the work she did, and the impact she made. And for the first time, Lena felt truly free. Lena's journey is a powerful reminder that our worth is not defined by the opinions of others, but by the strength we find within ourselves. If Lena's story inspired you, hit that subscribe button and join our community of story lovers. Have you ever had to prove your worth in a similar way? Share your story in the comments below, and let's continue to support one another in our journeys of growth and empowerment.